talk about my mother and her dealing with me having the white wife.
Is it an issue?
It is an issue,
Really?
man. Yeah.
Because I get more your mom than your dad.
Yeah.
Because it's a comment on her. She's like, why didn't he go find a woman that's like me? Or by me, I mean, is she the Guatemalan?
She's the Guatemalan, yeah.
Why, by me, I mean a nice Guatemalan woman.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, do you want to wear these?
It's up to you, man. If you wear them,
Wait,
I'll wear
because you
them.
have the hair.
I don't care. If you wear them, I wear them. If you don't, I'm good.
I'm going to wear them. But the thing
then
is
I'm
that...
going to wear them.
Okay,
I don't
but
wanna look
you're gonna redo your hair before we leave because it's
Nah,
perfect.
The hair's going to be...
Perfect.
The
You
hair
got the back.
stays.
Erik Rivera, you're on Check It Out.
Check it out.
First question, because we were doing a lot of talk before we started taping. You want to know what this is?
Yeah, what's that on your chain?
So this is like a clear quartz crystal, and this is a copper wire, and those are two magnets.
Okay.
Do you have like something like metallic? It
I got
maybe
my
like this?
Fitbit. It usually sticks to... Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So,
So-
what, is it for like circulation? What is it for?
It creates a certain magnetic field,
Uh-huh.
and it really like how like a lot of people, the New Age people, think that like crystals have metaphysical properties.
Right.
I don't necessarily 100% subscribe to that, but I like the placebo effect of, and it's a nice gesture. Oh yeah, a nice little crystal for luck, and it's just kind of like a gesture, so to speak. But this actually has magnets and copper wire, which actually does have a certain magnetic field around it. So, if you want to be New Age about it, if you have certain magnetic fields around you, it helps your magnetic field. It helps your electromagnetic field, which human beings have. How that affects you, health-wise, mood, whatever, I don't know.
What does your family think about that? Because the reason I asked, my little sister got into crystals for a while. My mom, con la brujería. Like, for her, it was a thing.
Yeah.
And she had to throw them out.
Well, so my parents just think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
But like my
course.
grandmother, who's way Catholic and traditional, she doesn't want to hear about this.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, brujería, que esto, this is pagan occult stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's why I asked.
What do you? I mean, you just think this is like fairy
No,
stuff?
I believe everybody should believe what they believe in and whatever helps people stay focused and motivated. Like, I'm not one to judge.
Right.
I feel like that's, especially now with social media, everybody's just judging. Like, look what are they doing? Look, man, if that makes that person happy, let them be happy. If something makes me happy, if that makes you happy, be happy. Who am I to judge?
Well, I also just like the way it
right?
looks. Let's be honest. I think it looks cool.
It does look cool.
At the
That's
end
why
of the day,
I
that's
asked. I was
probably
like,
the most important
is that
thing.
like a bullet? Is that like a sword? Because it's always something crazy, and then boom, that's cool.
Are you a spiritual person?
I grew up. We bounced around from religion. So when I was born, we were Catholic.
Right.
I got baptized Catholic, and then my parents moved over to Jehovah's Witness.
Wow.
I joke around that they did it so they could save money because they don't celebrate nothing.
Right.
Like birthdays, Christmas.
Right.
That's what they believed in for most of my life.
I dated somebody who had been a Jehovah's Witness, for a few years, way before we started dating. But yeah, there's very specific, strict beliefs.
Right.
You can't celebrate a birthday.
No birthdays, no Christmas, no Easter. Everything's got some negative backstory to it.
Oh, I can imagine crystals would be like the worst thing.
Oh, yeah. But if
Idols.
you're a dude, that's who you want to date because then you don't have to celebrate anything.
Wow, that's
hilarious. You forgot my birthday. No, girl, that's your religious beliefs. I didn't.
How long were you guys a Jehovah's Witnesses?
We were a Jehovah's Witness for, I want to say, at least 8 years.
What happened? Your family got the age to celebrate Christmas again?
There was Christmas. For a kid, it's the worst. But after a while, my parents just decided it wasn't the right religion for them, and then we went Pentecostal Christian.
Okay. And this is all in New York?
This is all in New York.
What neighborhood did you grow up in?
So I grew up in New Rochelle.
Okay.
Which is right outside of the boroughs. Because everybody, like, when you say New York, people go, oh, what borough?
Yeah.
Queens, Bronx. We grew up outside of, it's right outside of the Bronx.
Right, New Rochelle. Okay, I was thinking it was closer to Queens, but like...
No, it's like northern Bronx.
Before you get to like Westchester.
Yeah, it's part of Westchester.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
my
it's suburban?
What? It's suburban, yeah. Because
Okay.
my parents met...
That'd be an easier place to be a Jehovah's Witness because I can't see you like running around the
Door to
city,
door in
like
the city? Nah.
doing the Jehovah's Witness thing. It's like people have an opinion and they'll share it with you.
My mom and dad met. They were living in Queens, and then my mom got pregnant. And she was like, "No, we're not raising a kid here."
Not to keep harping on it, but I just find it super interesting, especially with Latinos. How did they fall into being Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
My mom's family for the longest time, and parts of her family still are very Jehovah's Witness. They still don't approve of what I do.
What? Do you talk to them?
I do talk to them. Yeah. No, I talk to them. Like, I'll visit them, too, because, like, I'll travel, so I get to see them. Everybody's a little spread out. Like, I just did Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
And they live in Texas, so I've hung out with them. And
do they try to preach to you, or they just
some
leave
of
it
them
alone?
do. And, like, I just laugh it off, and, like, they know not to push too hard. And if they keep pushing, then I'll make some smart alecky comment, and it becomes, ay, mira.
Well, yeah, you got the power of being a comedian in your head. Well, the thing is that because you were a Jehovah's Witness yourself, how old were you when you guys were Jehovah's Witnesses?
I was young. I was in elementary school.
But you remember enough that you can kind of come back at them and say, I get what this is all about.
Yeah.
So you don't have to even. It's not like you're teaching me something new and you're going to convince me of something I didn't know of before.
Right.
I did.
And then as you get older, you read other stuff and you
Right.
go, oh, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. Even religion now, like there's parts of it, as you get older, you go, I don't know if I believe in that, but I do believe there's a higher being. I just don't believe in some of the
version
crazy
of
beliefs of it. Yeah.
Well, that was kind of my path. The reason why I even got into like New Agey stuff to begin with, and I don't necessarily believe in a lot of it. It's because I was raised Catholic and I kind of rebelled against it, and I became fairly agnostic. I wouldn't say atheist, but pretty like, this interpretation, things in the Bible. There's a lot of things I like about it,
Right.
But there's a lot of agenda. There's a lot of things that I don't find very accurate, and some things that I just find silly and made up. And I found it crazy that some people would take it literally.
Oh yeah.
But I do think that when I started getting into other, when you start getting into the New Age stuff, you learn about Hinduism and Buddhism and the Eastern religions, and you find things that you like about that, and you also things that are very airy-fairy and kind of silly. So I cherry pick, and people say that's a bad thing. Oh, you're cherry picking. Yeah,
Right.
I'm absolutely cherry picking the things that resonate with me.
No, and you should.
Right.
I find it crazy. And I hate that we got this deep on religion, but
Hey, we start every Checkitow really.
I find
really
it crazy that every year there's a new iPhone update, but the Bible doesn't update.
Yeah.
Come on. There's new software update for our lives because everything around us is evolving, but the Bible, written millions of years ago, has stayed the same. That's
hilarious.
That's crazy. I remember my mom. We didn't have money, so she bought me an old set of encyclopedias.
World Book or Britannica?
Britannica. This is in elementary school.
Kids, there used to be a thing called the encyclopedia.
Yeah.
It was a big set of books, and if you wanted to know about something, you'd look it up. Hopefully it was in there.
This is before the internet.
Right.
So that's what you did. You either went to the library or you got these encyclopedias. I remember I did a book report once, and again, we didn't have money, so it wasn't a brand new set of encyclopedias.
Right.
It was an old version. So I remember I did a book report, and the teacher
1978.
pulled me off to the side and was like, hey, where did you get this information? I was like, oh, the encyclopedias that we own. She goes, yeah, they're old because this information has changed.
Was it space stuff? Was it? Like
It was
the number
about
of planets?
cells and stuff, and I forget what
Okay.
I wrote about, but she was just like, yeah, this is no longer true.
Wow.
So it's funny to me, like, they're judging you for cherry picking stuff that you agree with in the Bible.
Right.
But how dare you? This doesn't change. Come
Right.
on.
I know.
That's crazy.
What's your sign? Just being on the New Agey thing, I'm sure you're like, what? Where is this going? Let me guess your sign. Hold on. Let me
Go
guess
ahead.
your sign. Taurus.
No.
Okay. Wait. One more. I hate telling people they're a Cancer.
No.
You're a Leo.
Not at all. Don't ever do this as a living. Don't be that guy at the circus. I will guess your
You're
sign.
not a Scorpio because you seem like you have.
No.
You're a Sagittarius, just like Amy Garcia.
No, dude,
Okay.
you're down a quarter now.
I wouldn't say you're a Virgo. You don't give a Virgo vibe.
No.
Pisces.
Nope.
Oh, it's your age. Aquarius.
Not at all.
Capricorn.
Yeah.
God, that was the first one I was thinking. I should have gone with my gut.
Yeah.
Just kidding. No, I'm really bad at these other. You know what? Some people are just really obvious,
Mm-hmm.
but since you don't believe in any of this stuff, it's harder
No,
to tell.
not at all. I've dated girls that they take it serious. Like
I would guess their sign easy.
Oh yeah, then I'm Virgo, but my moon's in here. I'm like, I don't know what any of that means.
That's okay. So where does your accent come from? It's not a pure New York accent. You throw in some I'm hearing a little bit of Texas. What's
I grew up in the suburbs. Studied and did everything in New York, started comedy in New York, and then I've been out here for like 9 years. So I'm starting to lose the New York.
okay?
I don't have the edge
I
anymore.
think the fleshing over is what's confusing me.
Yeah.
Because there's an undertone of New York. There's a foundation of New York in your accent, but then like the over, you kind of like flesh over the words in a way that's not so New York. Maybe it's more California. Maybe you're doing a lot of shows in Texas or something.
Maybe, I don't know. I've gotten people like, oh, were you from the Midwest? You got a little bit of a twang. You got this. I'm like, I don't know.
Because
Born
those
and
are
raised
good
from New York.
peeps in the middle of the country.
Yeah.
In the Midwest and Chicago, Dallas, and all that stuff. So maybe they rub you the right way. Not these crazy people in
Right.
Hollywood that ask you about their signs.
Yeah.
I want to give you some rock, some magic rock.
Yeah.
Eric, you're so grounded. You're a dad, right?
I am a dad. I got 2 boys. man.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think the last time I interviewed you, you had one.
I have 1, yeah.
And I think maybe the other one, how old are they?
6 and 3.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, I think the other one was on the way.
Yeah.
Because you were making jokes about your
My wife being pregnant. Yeah, yeah.
again. and whether you can handle this again.
Yeah.
And so how's it going?
It's going good. They're at a good age. They started school. Little ones in preschool. Older ones in first grade. No more diapers. That's the fight, man. You got to get them out of diapers.
Well, what was that like between you and your wife? Did you have certain daddy duties that you always had to do, or would she, would you try to like, deflect as much as possible?
Well, it's a team effort, man. You gotta, you double team one kid if you can and try to help, get them the potty training and, switch it off. But it was good. We're in a good place now. Both boys, they play together.
I love what you're saying now.
Oh, no, dude, I don't lie to people. Like, when people are like, oh, we're expecting a baby, I'm like, listen, the first couple months is rough. You don't sleep. And then get ready for this and get ready for, because it's constantly changing. Right. Like, you don't realize you're bringing in a brand new being to your house who has no sense of schedule, no sense of anything. So when you're like, oh, we go to sleep at like 9 o'clock and we don't wake up till 7, that baby's like, nope. Yeah. I don't know what that means. All right. You got to teach them everything. So it's a struggle the first couple of years.
Now, is the second one, is your younger son getting, not to say less attention, but I can imagine the first one, you guys were like on top of it. Right. And then the second one, do you feel like, okay, we can go into cruise control a little bit with the potty training and the other things, or is it just as intense?
It's not as intense. So the first one, you're always terrified because you're like, you've never done this before. Right. So you're terrified, like, oh, I'm going to mess this up, and you're constantly on top of them. Second one, you're a little more laid back. So we find that the second one's a little more adventurous than the first one was. Like, their personalities are very different. Because we were so on top of the first one, the second one's a little crazier, as my wife puts it. Like, he's the one that jumps up on the couch.
That
and,
happens with most people that have multiple kids. Yeah. The younger kid is always a little crazier.
Yeah. So the second one's a little nutty.
That's funny. And so how has having children affected your stand-up routine?
I talk about them. Yeah. I talk about them a lot, and it's cool because people relate. I think it'll make it easy for me to be a dad. Right. Because, I don't have like the timeout or anything, but it was like, if you mess up, I'm going to talk about it. So you better be on your best behavior.
Do you hang out at comedy clubs, or are you the kind of guy that does your set and goes home?
I hang out from time to time. It really depends. Like,
what are the clubs in LA that you kind of you frequent more
in
often?
LA, I'm at the Laugh Factory a lot. Okay. I do the Ice House in Pasadena, Comedy Magic Club in Hermosa.
The Comedy Store is a little too, it's not a lot of dads and moms hanging out at the Comedy Store, right?
Comedy Store is cool. I just, they've got their own way of doing things. I've never cracked it. Like when I first came out here, there was a dude booking it who, he was just a weird dude to like, get along with. Yeah. So I missed that whole ship. And now it's got this new, boom to it. So it's going back out and just doing the hang thing.
It's like a club, but I can see you really hitting, well, in places like the Laugh Factory and the Comedy Magic Club, in Hermosa Beach, right? Yeah. Because you have a wider range of people. I think the Comedy Store is like a club, you know, when you're getting like 20-somethings and rowdy 30-somethings, and not a lot of moms and dads, or maybe moms and dads on their night out they're gonna get wasted. Or they're going to the Comedy Store. Do you deal with hecklers?
Yeah, but I don't get them as much as, like, there's some dudes that, like...
People better not be heckling you during your dad joke.
Yeah.
I'm offended. I don't have kids.
Yeah. How dare you talk to us like that? No, there are some dudes that do, like, constant heckler videos. I've never been that guy. Like, I don't rub people the wrong way where they have to yell stuff out at me. Like, how dare this guy talk about this? It's, everybody's always been cool with me. Like, maybe on one hand I can count how many times I've been heckled. Right. But even then, those heckles weren't, like, malicious or anything.
It was somebody drunk just chiming in.
It's chiming in or getting too excited to be there and saying something. And they're like, all right, you got to take it down a notch.
It's not a duet.
Yeah. This is a one-man show.
Yeah. And how'd you get into comedy?
So I started back in college. I was at Pace University, and it was, so 9/11 happened. And our campus was about 6 blocks away from the World Trade Center site. They shut down the school. So we missed that whole semester. Wow. Because they were using the campus as a triage to help people out who were displaced or injured, or, the campus was just shut down. So then we come back in January, and, they're giving us the whole spiel like, hey, everything's fine, but you can see the soot and the dirt all over the buildings. There's tanks driving down the street, dudes with AK-47s just walking around. It was insane. It was just complete, like, chaos. Wow. And I just remember nobody on campus felt safe. There was on-site therapists. That's how bad it was. Like, people were transferring out. People didn't want to be there. And I remember watching the news one night, and they came up with this. It was this segment called "Is It Too Soon to Laugh?" And they were showing how these comedy clubs in New York were just overfilling. Wow. People were coming out because they wanted to forget. They wanted to just get their minds off of it, and that's what comedy does for people. So I came up with this idea to start doing these relief shows on campus, and I booked this little room thinking, who's gonna come out? Maybe nobody comes out. It was like a 200-seater. When I tell you, people were standing out in the hallway. Like, there was over 400 people. Like, people wanted to forget. People wanted to not be constantly reminded of what had happened, and it was just an amazing event. And then the comedians all were excited to do it because they got to give back in some way. And I remember the comics all told me the same thing. Like, hey, man, anytime you want to see a show, come on out. So I started going to shows every night. Like, I became so infatuated with comedy.
Now, you hadn't had thoughts of becoming a stand-up comedian prior to that?
No, not at all at that point.
What was your intention? To be a performer, some kind, acting? Or?
I didn't know. Like, I knew I liked the entertainment field. Like, I remember in high school, I tried out for a high school play. I didn't get it. That was technically my fault because, they were like, prepare a monologue. And all the other kids like Virginia Woolf, Shakespeare, and the only monologues I knew were John Leguizamo. So I did.
How did you not get? They should have. They should have given you based on that.
You're basing it on an old classic white guy who's booking this, and I went up and I did a piece from Freak.
Wow.
His one-man show, but I did the piece of him when he talks about the first time he's masturbated.
Oh my god!
So this dude is like, "What am I watching?" After he's seen somebody do Othello and Macbeth, and here comes this little brown kid, like, "Hey guys, so." This is what happens, and I'm jerking off on stage, and he's just like, "Hey, listen, I'm gonna call you." I was like, "You don't have my number." He goes, "I'll guess it. Don't worry, just go."
Wow.
Yeah. So I knew I liked that space. I just didn't know stand-up comedy was an actual field. Like, that's not in any pamphlet you look at. Like, oh, what am I gonna do for the rest of my life?
Wow, that's hilarious, man.
So I went to Pace University. I did communications. I took some acting classes. I didn't really love that. The theater part of it because it was very technical. It was just, and I like to, more freedom. I took speech classes. I loved those, being in front of people and doing speeches. So I still wasn't sure what I was going to do. I started doing music.
You'd make a good politician, man.
Oh, thanks.
Have you thought about that?
No, never.
I think we need more comedians in politics.
More comedy in politics?
Yeah.
We've got the funniest dude right now in office.
Well, I don't think he's trying to be
He's not trying
comedian.
to be funny, but it's a show.
It is.
So then I actually started going into music, but like on the backside, like the producer side of it.
Right.
And I started going around with groups because at that point I still didn't know what I wanted to do. So then I fell in love with comedy, and then one day I just remember sitting at a show. I was at the Comic Strip Live, and it all just clicked, and I was like, wait, I think I can do this. Like, I finally saw what they were doing. Like, I saw what the art form was. And appreciate it.
You cut your teeth in the New York stand-up comedy scene.
Yeah.
What's the difference between the New York comedy scene and the LA comedy scene?
I just think there's more stage time available in New York.
Okay.
So, as a comedian, if you're coming up and let's say you're working out a new joke, you can get up 8 times that one night and really work that joke out, as opposed to LA where there's not as much stage time, and you're competing with a lot more than you are in New York. In New York, you're just competing with comics. So the cream rises to the top. In LA, you're competing with actors whose agents want them to try comedy, improv guys, magic,
writers,
celebrities. Like, that's why you'll see something like a couple years ago they had that Michael Richards meltdown where he goes off, he just starts spewing, these racist remarks.
Right.
As a comic, I didn't look at him and go, oh, what the hell? He's not a comic. So for him, he's not used to a heckler.
Right.
If I get a heckler, the last thing I'm going to do is spew a racial remark because I know how to deal with it. He didn't know how to deal with it. So he's a celebrity who like, oh, he's funny. Let's just throw him on stage. That would never happen in New York. If you're not a stand-up comic, you don't get on stage. So that's why it's harder to make it out here because it's less stage time and you're competing with a lot more.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Because you also see like the shift. I think right now a lot of people seem to be paying attention to the LA comedy scene.
Yeah.
But it also involves a lot of New Yorkers that come to LA after cutting their teeth in New York.
Yeah.
And you're right. When I go to New York, there's that, what is it, in Greenwich Village or something, where you have like the Comedy Sellers next to this other place, and there's like 5 different,
Yeah, and you can just run around and bounce around and do spots. So it'll take you a lot less time in New York to develop a joke than it would here, because here there's not as many spots. I think there's like 4 main clubs. So even if you jumped around all 4 clubs in one night, you're getting up 4 times as opposed to the 15 times you could get up in New York.
Yeah.
So that joke gets there faster.
You mentioned something that I actually want to hit on. You said how there was on-site therapy. Not to laugh at this because it involves the 911 story, but there was on-site therapists on campus for 911, and which is justified, and that's what happened. Do you think that that all this therapy and like safe space on campus is actually a residue from those therapists after 911 had already, it's been a couple years and they don't need to be there?
Yeah.
They needed to concoct a reason for these kids to have issues for them to be there.
Right.
And to like coddle them and just make them feel better about life.
I think
because 911 is a good excuse. Everyone needs a therapist.
Everybody needs a therapist. Yeah.
But 5, 6, 7 years later, 10 years later.
Yeah, I think I you can't blame it on that. I think it's the social media, man. People just want to be heard, but if they don't hear what they want to hear,
right,
all of a sudden they're offended.
Yeah.
Like, it's so funny that we're taking that word offended, and it means just almost anything now.
Right.
Like, offended means you're offended. Yeah. Like, can you even remember the last time you were actually offended?
Yeah, so I know times that I use the excuse where I'm like, I could be offended at this, so I'm gonna go ahead and take the opportunity to be mad.
Yeah.
At this person.
But like legit offended.
The only times I get really offended is when somebody makes, like, let's say, I have a comedian friend. I've already called him out before on this, but I won't do it again. But he has this joke he made a joke about like my Cuban mom, right? Like a mom joke. But he's a white guy, doesn't understand Cuban culture, and his joke was ignorant. Like, you can tell he's never met a Cuban. He doesn't understand Cubans at all, and just he kind of lumps it all in. So I was offended at like if somebody makes a joke about me, my community, where I'm from, whatever, but they know my community.
Right.
There's knowledge there. I don't get offended.
Right.
Even if they're saying Cuba, my family's from Cuba. If you go to Miami and you come back with like Cubans are really loud and obnoxious jokes, but it's because I spent time with them. I love them. Yeah. But they're loud and obnoxious. No, that's fine. I'm good with that. But like this guy was making a joke of like, oh, my mom being like a maid or something like that, which there's nothing wrong with being maid. But if you lived in Miami, you understand that Cubans, because there's no white people there. So Cubans actually they take up and the the dynamic of a lot of Cubans, especially the early days, not so much now. They were coming for political oppression, not economic oppression. So a lot of them were educated. So when he was like making, when your mom's done being the maid or something, I'm like, you say that joke in Miami,
right?
See how people will be offended. But I wasn't genuinely offended. It's not like I'm like, oh my God, I need to put this guy in this place. I was like, wah, wah. Like, that's my reaction.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Not. So when was I genuinely offended the last time? God, you put me on the spot. I can't think of it.
Yeah,
mildly offended.
But that's most of society.
Right.
Like, no one's genuinely offended. It's a cause, or they'll hear trigger words. Because I've been on stage. I used to do this joke about, Trump the first time he got elected, right? And the joke is it's a story about my mom voting for the first time. There's nothing offensive about the joke, but people hear that word, Trump, and they get offended. Like, I had a woman walk out of my show. After the show, she's waiting by the bar. She wants to talk to me. She wants to tell me what offended her. And sure enough, she wasn't genuinely offended. She tells me, I can't believe you sided with him. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? She goes, everything was great until you started talking about Trump and how you supported him. I was like, well, nope. You didn't even listen to what I said.
Right.
You heard the trigger word. You felt like you should be offended, and you walked out. If you had actually taken the time to really listen to what I'm saying, you would have realized what the story was. So that's, I feel like.
And what was it? Do you mind saying the background to the joke if you can give
the joke goes, so my mother never voted before. Like, for her and my father was always like, we grew up in a time was like, don't get involved in stuff because that's how the government tracks you. And like, my dad was very like, and so the same thing with my mom, like, you don't get involved with politics because, when you get involved with politics in Latin America, it's bad.
Yeah.
So you don't get involved. So that's the way we were raised. So she never voted before until this past election. She heard him give his speeches. And, a lot of it can be anti-Latino. It was like very, we're drug dealers, we're rapists. Like, he doesn't paint us in a good light. So it was the first time my mother goes, oh, no, I'm voting. I got to stop this dude. Like, for her, it was on her. She was going to do it single-handedly.
Right.
So I go on and tell about the first time she voted. Like, I went to go pick her up. She came out. She dressed up like she was going out. She had her hair done. And I was like, all right, it's not that serious. You're not going to meet him. You're not going to the White House to really stop him. And she voted, and she thought, she thought she did the right thing, and she thought her vote was going to matter. And she's watching the election happen, and, she sees that map, and it's red. It looks like the Verizon map. And she's like, oh, look at that. We're winning. And I was like, wait, why do you think Hillary is red? She's like, oh, because blue's for boy. I was like, nope, that's...
Oh, my God,
we're
that's
losing
hilarious.
This now. So, yeah, so that's the whole story. It's of me taking her down and, like, her, the way she reacted to it and just her still not believing it, But this woman in the audience just heard Trump. She thought I was pro-Trump.
Right.
So I'm offended. I'm going to walk out.
Right.
And that's everybody nowadays on social media.
Yeah.
They don't really take the time to have that conversation. And sometimes for fun, like, I'll engage some of these people on Twitter. Right. And you can tell that they're not listening to you. Yeah. They just have their own. These are my talking points. Right. I'm just gonna keep going and going.
They're
and going.
not receiving anything. They just want to get their turn to throw something at you, and then turn around to whatever audience they think they have on social media. CC, and they want to win. Yeah, the winning brownie points, stances drives me crazy. It's like you don't really feel or think this deeply enough.
Right.
You just think this is going to earn you some sort of point with somebody who I have no idea.
Yeah.
The social media ether, the social media gods, So it can be very annoying. I actually I've been thinking about, not that I have like crazy controversial tweets, but I've been thinking about just deleting my Twitter history and starting over.
It's funny. I've thought about deleting Twitter, and it's not because I've got anything that's gonna pop up and
because you're like one of the nice guys in comedy.
To take me down,
it's funny that you're and this is actually telling that I think most comedians right now are definitely on the side of free speech, even the ones that are super woke, except for a few. There's definitely this one like unfunny comedians that they just want to make a point, but you're like a nice guy. Like no one would ever describe Erik Rivera as one of the more controversial, like offensive comedians. But you do see like a point to, defending against people being so triggered by words that they walk out on a joke without even listening to it.
Yeah, the only reason I would delete Twitter is, for me, like Instagram, I engage with my fans and I can post stuff up. Facebook is the same thing. I engage with people. Twitter to me is just more like, have you've been to New York City?
Yeah.
Twitter to me is a crazy person standing up in a subway yelling something out.
Right.
And then somebody else just popping up and yelling something. Like that's all it is. Like people just yelling crazy thoughts out. And for me, there's no real engagement of, developing a fan or, hey, come see me at this show or this is what I'm doing. Or,
well, you said that you sometimes go back and forth with people on Twitter.
Sometimes
what was that like?
Because it's so ridiculous of the stuff they get mad at. Like I remember I retweeted something Voto Latino had put up for the Dreamers. Mm-hmm. They're like, oh, we're raising funds. And I retweeted it, as my way of supporting. Mm-hmm. And somebody, of course, tweets at me like, "Oh, how could you? You don't realize the funding that they're costing our government." And it was just like, "What?" I was like, "Okay." And and then if Obama did it, and it's like, I didn't even. Yeah. What are you even talking about right now? Like, what's going on? And what about Hillary's emails? And like, all right, man, just have a good one. Like, I started saying nice things to them, and it riles them up even more. Like, hey, man, have a great day. Oh, well. Wait till Trump gets elected again. I'm like, what's happening right now? Yeah. You're crazy.
Well, I used to be a very political person.
Right.
And here was my turning point where I'm still just as informed. I still read the news as much as ever. I'm still I still have my opinions, but I don't share them as much. I do share when asked, but I don't ram them down somebody's throat. I don't try to confront people or try to be like, I'm going to correct your point of view when it's my obligation to do so.
Right.
My turning point was this. I was, in 2008, I actually worked. It's funny you bring up Voto Latino. I worked with Voto Latino in 2008 registering Latinos to vote. And I didn't, I wanted to register Latinos no matter what. Even if they're Latino Republicans, which there are plenty of that.
Right.
They fly a little more under the radar. Coming from a Cuban community, I know more of them because in Miami you have a little bit more. But I was involved, and I did become. I was so motivated and inspired by Barack Obama. Really, because if you listen to him in 2008, he has a very actually bipartisan centered message. It might not necessarily have been the case for the Democrats later on and I don't think that's the case now. But at the time, if you listen to Obama, he sounded like a very rational centrist. Again, sounded like I don't necessarily know. Politicians once they get in office, they have to deal with the people in the back room telling them, nah, this is the way it works. So, but I couldn't get along with a Republican in 2008. Like I had a Republican uncle. We couldn't talk without going off into an argument and all out. By email, we'd email each other like all these and these long. I mean, it got to a point where I'm like, I just wasted 25 minutes of my life writing a 750-word email, edited, corrected it, did some research to make sure I'm getting my facts straight to send to him. He's doing the same thing. We're going back and forth. I'm like, I got more important things. And the real turning point was this. I had a couple of Cuban friends from Miami here. Actually, some of them lived here, and at the table, most of them were like politically agnostic, like they weren't one way or the other. But there was this Republican guy, right? He was like a Brooks brotherish like Cuban, like smoke a cigar, kind of like Republican, flaunting it, and he and me we couldn't get along at all. Like I kept on we were at a table at this cigar club. And it was one of my like politically agnostic centered friends' birthday, and we're all trying to have fun. And the guy's sitting next to me, and we're all trying to just relax and have a good time. And every chance I got, I was like, "Oh, you're for that, but you don't believe that poor people should get benefits. You don't believe in social programs, so everyone just on their own." I could, and then he would go back and forth with me, and I remember the look that my friend, whose birthday it was, who's actually a Democrat, and he agrees with me on most things, but he just looks at me like, we're just trying to have a good time, man.
Right.
Like, stop. And that was the moment where I realized, okay, I don't need to force my views down somebody's throat, even if I'm convinced that I'm right and convinced they're wrong. And you know what's happened since then? I've actually become more centered. Because I'm holding back from trying to correct people's point of views, I actually listen more, and I'm like, oh, you know what? It's not as black and white.
Yeah.
I'm more in the gray now.
It's not. There's always points that you can, like, it's almost back to the religious thing, where you pick and, like, oh, this is I disagree with. This is not so much.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting time of comedy, but I believe comedy's coming back to save the day. I mean, I believe, we're going to get to your special now, but there's a special, it seems like comedy specials are like the thing now. You got Netflix doing a lot of them. You got, a bunch of other networks. And I saw you first in Entre Nos.
Right.
And so now you're getting your first half-hour special?
My first half-hour special.
HBO?
HBO.
Okay, good.
November 1st is going to be available on all platforms.
Awesome. What's it called?
It's called Super White.
Super white.
Super
white.
Explain
that, because you got a nice tan, Erik Rivera.
So
maybe over the phone I get it. See, that's the thing about the way you talk. Over the phone I couldn't tell you're Latino.
Yeah. So I have the white wife. I poke fun at that. The differences between me and her. Also, Super White is a subtle jab at when you're American-born Latino. You're kind of looked down upon by I get looked down upon by my family who was born in either Puerto Rico or Guatemala. Look at him. Oh, que blanco. Like, that's always the ongoing joke. So for me, Super White was like the perfect title because it sort of encompasses everything going on in my life with my wife and the stuff I do with her. Living, in Los Angeles. I live in the suburbs and growing up the way I did, and then just being American born. Sometimes we're sort of looked down upon by Latinos, like, look at him. He's reading a book. He's a professor now. Drinking bottled water. Oh, he's so fancy. And you're like, no, I'm just me. Like, why is this a thing?
And they call but have you ever had one of your Latin American family members or friends call you Super White? Oye,
I've had Blanquito, Super White. I've gotten coconut. That's always my favorite. So you get that.
You're a coconut. I like that.
I've gotten coconut, man.
Somebody's going to be offended right now going, you're a what? You're using... Don't you know that telling somebody they're a coconut is blah, 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 blah?
Oh, yeah. No, I've had cousins like, oh, you're a coconut. Look at you. You this, that, and the other. You married a white woman. And I'm like, well, you all kept calling me coconut my whole life.
But
what kind of water do they love?
Exactly.
Coconut water. That's on you.
Exactly.
You guys made me like attracted to white women.
That's so fun. But, I also think that a lot of the I have to use this word because I did have a comedian here who is one of these world comedians. She's amazing. All right, Liana Carrera. But she was like, I said, oh, now that we're doing a lot of race mixing, it's good because everyone's kind of coming together. And she goes, wait, race mixing? Like I hear like are you using it right? I'm like, what do you mean? I'm saying, yeah, people mixing races. Yeah. And she goes, wait, race mixing sounds like something like a KKK guy would say. I'm like, oh my God. And then I educated her. I'm like, take me for what I'm saying, the spirit of what I'm saying, and just because the term
Right.
It seems like it's used because you know how like, oh, these race mixers, yeah, like a KKK.
Right.
Or these,
No, don't say it
use the
like
term
that, though. If you
No,
say it
I
with
know.
that-
But I'm saying, no,
If you say it
race
with that
mixing
tone,
is
that
good.
sounds bad.
Yeah, but I didn't say it like
Race
that. But
mixing,
she's
I didn't take
hearing
it
it
bad.
like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
She's hearing it like that. So I'm like, no, I'm saying mixing races,
Right.
people of different races,
Yeah.
having, you know, children of mixed race is a good thing, is bringing us together. So that's the context of what it's saying. And
Yeah.
she's like, oh, I think the word you have to use is interracial. I go, all right, but I was looking for like a verb, not a noun or an adjective
Right.
or whatever that is. Now I'm getting confused. But she definitely educated me in trying to be cognizant of the words because I don't want to be stepping on people's buttons. But at the same time, I told her, people can also receive it the correct way and give people the benefit of the doubt that they don't mean something in the worst possible way,
Right.
unless it's obvious they are.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I almost got offended. I almost walked out of here.
Oh God, I knew it, Eric. So that's amazing. So November is going to be available on all platforms. Super white. What are the things you're talking about?
November 1st, so I talk about my family. I'm talking about the kids. I talk about my mother and her dealing with me having the white wife.
Is it an issue?
It is an issue, man.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I get more your mom than your dad.
Yeah.
Because it's a comment on her. She's like, why didn't he go find a woman that's like me? Or by me, I mean, is she the Guatemalan?
She's the Guatemalan, yeah.
Why, by me, I mean a nice Guatemalan woman.
Yeah.
But-
And she's I don't want to say the antithesis because they are very different. So it's funny because they get along, but it's very...
Also, so not just different races. You went out and married a woman that in every way, shape, and form is different from your mom?
So my mother was she raised me and my sister. She took care of the home. She cooked. She cleaned. She went and worked. And my wife is a more modern day woman. I think she's cooked for me 3 times. We've been married 8 years. So, and my wife
Kraft macaroni and cheese.
Yeah, my wife is white collar. Like, she really focused on her career.
Okay.
And sometimes her and my mother just don't understand each other because they're speaking the same language, but it's almost like different music. Like my wife's talking jazz, and my
But
mother.
are they both headstrong?
They're both headstrong.
Okay, so that's the commonality that they can unite.
I know,
in.
but
It's
they don't
just
see that.
Yeah.
To them, they're just like my mother comes to visit, and my wife right away, she's like, she cooks all day. Like, I don't understand what she's cooking, but that's just a cultural thing. That's my mother's thing.
Latinos like to slow cook their meat and have like the broth, like cooking for a while. It actually makes things more tender. Kraft macaroni and cheese.
Yeah. And then
By the way,
mother,
does your wife ever cook Kraft macaroni?
yeah,
and
she
cheese?
does.
Okay.
But and she does the instant too, the little cup.
Yeah, but but that's the dude. It's really good.
It's quick, 3.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then to my mother, she doesn't.
Oh, so she won't even do the 6.5 boil.
No, man. We don't got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that.
You should tell your mom, listen, Mom, if you were born a modern day white woman, you'd be just like my wife.
Yeah. No,
And-
my mother, you crazy. My mother would slap me right there, dude.
That's hilarious.
And then with my mother, she doesn't understand my wife's career. Like, she goes and she works at this company and the spreadsheets, and my mother's like, I don't know what that means. So it's funny, like they don't really understand each other.
How does your wife, who's a corporate, a professional, how does she deal with having a husband who is a stand-up comedian?
We balance each other out, man. Like I honestly, like, she's the first person, like, she started dating me. She didn't understand what comedy was. She thought it was going to be just all jokes all the time. And she saw the business of it, and she sees the way I tackle stuff. And it's a nice balance because she does keep me financially and, everything responsible.
Right.
Like, as opposed to before her, I was just get cash and spend it and like, I ain't got no money. Like, she's like, no, we got a budget.
I need to be motivated to go out and do stand-up comedy. Part of that motivation, being broke.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
it's been great, man.
How aside from the stand-up comedy, what else are you doing? Acting, writing?
So right now I'm currently developing a scripted sitcom with Eva Longoria and her production company.
Nice.
Yeah, we did it 5 years ago. We sold it to NBC, and then they ended up just going a different direction. Translation, not Latino. And now me and Eva have teamed up again, and we're hoping this time we get across the finish line.
How did you meet her?
I met her at a show. A mutual friend of ours was like, oh, my friend wants to watch you do comedy. I've told her about you. I was like, all right, cool. And then when she shows up, I was like, why didn't you tell me your friend was Eva Longoria? Why would you keep that part?
Was this here in L.A.?
Yeah, it was here in L.A. at the
Is
Laugh
it a
Factory.
Texas connection?
No, this was at the Laugh Factory.
But what I'm saying is that the mutual friend, because she's from Texas, right?
Yeah, Eva's from Texas.
Okay.
Yeah, no, the mutual friend was just somebody I had met through, one of the awards like the NHMC.
Well, she was already Eva Longoria from was it Desperate Housewives?
At that point, she was on Desperate Housewives. Yeah, she was. I believe she was married to Tony Parker at that point.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because he came out to the show and I was like,
really?
Oh, this dude is tall. Look at him. Yeah.
That's awesome. He was one of my favorite point guards. Wow, that's really cool, man. So, dude, is it getting easier to pitch, Latin content to mainstream general market studios and networks? Is it?
It's
because it seems like they're saying you're getting mouse like lip service. Yeah, we want more Latino stuff, but when they read it, do they get it? Do they?
Well, I'll answer that with a question. How many Latino family sitcoms are you watching on air right now?
There's only a couple that I can think off the top of my head.
And on network television, there's zero, dude.
Network television
so
zero.
Is it getting easier? We're in the room.
Yeah.
Are they making them? That's a different story. They keep saying they want it, but at some point they got to put their money where their mouths are, and they're not doing that.
You know what else I think about Latin content? Because I'm writing a few projects now. Is for me, I don't think of them as Latin projects.
No.
I'm thinking of them as the story. They happen to have the Latino characters, and you're gonna get a lot of the background, and a little bit of Spanglish, and the aspects of culture.
But that's the way we see it. For them, because it's an old guard, they have to see the. So you guys, the dinner scene. Are you guys eating tacos? And you're like, what? We're just a family like that, because that's the way I've always envisioned myself. I'm like, I'm a stand-up comedian.
Right.
I just happen to be Latino.
Yeah.
But I go to comedy clubs and they want to put a sombrero on me and call it caliente comedy, and I'm just like,
that's
what
the
are we
thing.
doing?
They sabotage it.
Yeah.
The reason why I think Latin stuff has had such a problem getting through the door is that they sabotage it by trying to make it overtly Latino to the point that it's contrived and forced.
Yeah. And then we smell it and don't watch it.
I know.
That's the problem.
That's the crazy thing.
Like if you watch George Lopez, his show wasn't overtly Latin. Like he didn't come out with like maracas or a poncho. Right. Like
I love the new one on TV Land that he was doing a couple years ago. I think he might be like that though. That one I really enjoyed because it was like the edgier George Lopez. Because I've had a good time interviewing. He always gives a really hard edged honest interview, but he can be a tough motherfucker.
Yeah. But that was him just being him,
Yeah.
and guess what? Him and his family just happen to be Latino, but networks, once they get involved, they all want to just, but what about if you come salsa dancing out? And you're like, what are we doing here? They're not going to watch this.
They're going to watch your show, though.
I hope so, man.
It's going to happen. And they're going to watch your special. I'm going to watch your special. I find Super White to be a hilarious title.
I do, too.
Super White. What does your wife think of the title?
She loves it. I was like, I'm naming this one after you. And I was like, Super White. She's like, you're an idiot.
Where's she from?
She's from Maryland. She's from not even like DC. She's on the western side of Maryland. Right. Like it's almost
not Chevy Chase, right?
No, not Chevy. So she was born in Frederick.
Okay.
And it's like
Frederick, Maryland.
It's a little town, and then like a lot of woodsy area, like to the point where it's if you and I walk into a store sometimes you'll hear that record scratch. Like, well, gotta get out of here.
Well, at least it's a record scratcher, not like a shotgun cocking.
Yeah.
That's more like, that's more certain like rural parts of like the Southwest maybe.
Right.
But there are a lot of Mexicans in the Southwest. Erik, is there anything else you want to, that we haven't covered that you want to throw in there before we go?
No, man. November 1st, Super White, HBO, all platforms. Follow me on social media, Erik Rivera. ERIK, don't mess that up. I'm gonna have a bunch of giveaways coming up leading up to the special.
Okay.
HBO's giving me like gift cards and stuff.
Let us know, man.
So if you don't have HBO Go, you can get a gift card and you can get it. You don't have to borrow your mom's password.
Let's do that.
You can boom.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? When Felipe Esparza had his last special, Translate This on HBO, it was the week that HBO was a free preview for everybody on like direct.
See, there you go.
So we'll do the same thing. Dude, thank you. Erik Rivera, you've been on Check It Out.
Thank you so much, man.